Welcome to Let's Talk Legal, where the law gets unpacked without the courtroom drama. Brought to you by NVR Attorneys, in association with Gold FM, this series tackles real legal issues, real-life situations, and the questions people usually Google at 2 a.m. Hosted by experienced attorneys who believe the law should make sense, not sound intimidating. This is legal insight, minus the jargon. Let's talk legal.
It's time for a brand new episode of Let's Talk Legal, which is proudly made possible by Informational Attorneys. And with me in studio, I do once again have Lerato. Lerato, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me today. I really feel very much welcome.
Awesome. And that's absolutely what we want to hear. So today we're going to be chatting about something very important. I think we hear about this concept a lot, but we don't always know what the process is on how to get one. So we're chatting a bit more about applying for a protection order. Now, where do I go if I need to apply for a protection order? Do I go to the nearest police station? What's the process in order for me to get a protection order?
Sure, Jessica, that is really a very important question to ask. You can go to the police station if you do want to open up a protection order, but then they will have to refer you to your nearest magistrate court where you'll be assisted to fill in the application. Obviously, the clerks at the court that you are at, they will definitely help you to apply for that protection order.
And do I need to take any proof with me when I go to court?
Yes, definitely. You do need to take proof with so that it can be attached to the application, because that proof that you provide to the court will basically be before the court so that they can decide whether to grant their application or not.
And after completing the forms, what then happens?
So after completing the forms, then you will have the opportunity to appear before a magistrate that will obviously consider your application and any other relevant documentation that you have attached. Okay. If he or she is satisfied that a protection order is necessary, then an interim order will be granted. If not, then a notice will be granted for the respondent to actually come and appear in court.
So after a notice or interim order is granted or a notice to appear is given, what happens to the respondent?
Well, the respondent will be served with the documents, and a return date will be granted to them so that they can basically appear before the court to explain why shouldn't the order be granted. Basically, the interim order to not be made a final order. Then you, as the person that is opening up the protection order, you will have an arrest warrant which will be held over, and then at the time, if it happens that the respondent then does not comply with the protection order, the interim order, then that's when you can use the warrant of arrest to have them arrested and brought to court.
Okay. And when will I know if such an order is final, and how long is it valid for?
So if the respondent does not really show up in court, the court will just make that interim order a final order. But if he or she does show up in court, the court is obliged to actually hear the other side of the story to make an informed decision as to whether to make the final order, to make the interim order a final order. So if an order in terms of the Domestic Violence Act is then granted, it can last up to 5 years. Okay. Meaning you will have it for a period of 5 years from the date it was granted. That is the final order. If it is granted, you have a period of 5 years to still use it, and it will still remain effective for that period.
Okay. Lerato, thank you so much for joining me in studio, and thank you for shedding some light with regards to applying for a protection order and, what one can expect and how to go about it. It's very important.
Thank you, Jessica, for having me. Have a nice day.
Only a pleasure. Thank you very much. And that wraps up this week's episode of Let's Talk Legal, which was brought to you by none other than Informational Attorneys.
That's it for this episode of Let's Talk Legal. If today's topic hit close to home, don't guess. Get advice. You can contact NVR Attorneys for clear, practical legal assistance, or follow the podcast for more conversations that make the law easier to live with. Because knowing where you stand is always better than finding out too late.